Months passed, and the galaxy changed in ways no one could have predicted. The footage from the arena spread like wildfire, igniting debates and protests across countless worlds. Humanity, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, became a symbol of resilience. The rulers' plans for invasion crumbled under the weight of public outrage, forcing them to retreat into the shadows. But Ethan knew their fight wasn't over. Not yet. The group had split up temporarily, each member pursuing different paths while staying connected through encrypted channels. Mia traveled to Earth's outer colonies, rallying support and organizing resistance cells. Ryan disappeared into the fringes of space, his exact whereabouts unknown, but his actions occasionally reported. Raids on supply lines, sabotage missions that crippled enemy operations. Nira worked tirelessly to unite alien factions, her diplomatic skills proving invaluable in building alliances. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to move quietly, avoiding detection as he gathered intelligence. He had become a ghost, slipping through the cracks of the galaxy's systems, always one step ahead of those hunting him. Yet, despite everything, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, a piece of himself left behind in the chaos of the arena. One day, while scavenging supplies on a remote moon, Ethan stumbled upon an old transmission beacon buried beneath layers of dust. Curious, he activated it, watching as static gave way to a flickering image. It was Calvor, his towering form battered and broken. The overseer's voice was strained, almost desperate. "If you're seeing this, then I am already dead. The rulers betrayed me, just as they will betray all who serve them. Find me at the ruins of the arena. There is something you must know." Ethan hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. Could it be a trap, or was it the key to finishing what they had started? After contacting Nia and Nira, he decided to investigate. They agreed to meet him at Silo 7, though none of them trusted the situation entirely. When Ethan arrived at the ruins of the arena, the sight took his breath away. The once mighty structure was now a crumbling shell, its walls scarred by time and conflict. As he stepped inside, he found Calvor, or what remained of him. The overseer lay slumped against a pillar, his exoskeleton cracked and lifeless. Beside him was a data crystal, glowing faintly in the dim light. Before Ethan could retrieve it, a figure emerged from the shadows. At first, he thought it was another enemy. But then he recognized the face. It was Ryan, his scared features hardened by months of solitude. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I heard about the beacon," Ryan said finally, his voice rough but steady. "Figured you'd show up." Ethan nodded, holding up the data crystal. This might be important. If Calvor risked dying to leave it, it's worth checking out. Ryan didn't argue. Together, they examined the crystal, uncovering a trove of classified information, blueprints for secret weapons, locations of hidden bases, and evidence of atrocities committed by the rulers. It was more than they had hoped for, a weapon they could use to strike back. As they prepared to leave, Ethan glanced at Ryan. "Why did you come here?" Ryan shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Someone has to make sure you don't get yourself killed." Despite the tension between them, Ethan felt a flicker of gratitude. Maybe trust wasn't so far out of reach after all. Back with the others, the group devised a plan to dismantle the ruler's empire piece by piece. The road ahead would be long and perilous, but they faced it together. Ethan's name echoed across the stars, not just as a survivor of the arena, but as a leader in humanity's fight for freedom. And somewhere deep within him, a spark of hope remained. Whatever happened next, he knew they had already proven one thing. Even the smallest voice could roar loud enough to change the universe. The transport ship hummed softly as it sped through the void of space, carrying Ethan and his unlikely group of allies away from Silo 7. The arena was far behind them now, but its shadow lingered in their minds. Each of them bore scars, some visible, others hidden deep within. Yet, for the first time, there was a sense of purpose that bound them together. Ethan sat near the window, staring out at the endless stars. His hands were still stained with dirt and blood, reminders of the battles he had fought. Beside him, Mia leaned back in her seat, her fiery red hair falling loose around her shoulders. She looked tired but resolute, her green eyes reflecting the faint glow of the ship's controls. Across from them, Ryan sat alone, his scared face unreadable as he cleaned his mace with deliberate movements. Nira perched gracefully on a bench nearby, her silver fur shimmering faintly in the dim light. "We need to decide what comes next," Nira said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm but firm, cutting through the weight of unspoken thoughts. "The rulers won't let this go unanswered. They'll retaliate, and soon." Mia nodded, her expression sharp. "She's right. Exposing them was just the first step. If we want to protect Earth, we have to stay one step ahead." Ethan turned to face her, his brow furrowed. "What do you suggest?" "We find allies," Maya replied without hesitation. "There are factions out there who oppose the rulers, species and humans who've been pushed aside or oppressed. If we can rally them, we might stand a chance." Ryan scoffed, his tone bitter. "You think they'll trust us? After everything, you really believe they'll fight for humanity?" "It's not about trust," Ethan interjected, his voice steady. "It's about survival. This isn't just our fight, it's theirs too. If the rulers succeed, no one is safe." For a moment, Ryan didn't respond. Then he sighed, shaking his head. "Fine, but don't expect me to play diplomat. I'm here because I don't have a choice." Nira stood, her tail flicking thoughtfully. "We'll start with the outer colonies. There are settlements there that have resisted the ruler's influence. They might be willing to help." As the group discussed their plan, the ship's sensors suddenly blared, signaling an incoming transmission. Ethan frowned, leaning forward to examine the console. A holographic image flickered to life, revealing a familiar figure, Kelvor. His towering form loomed over the small cabin, his glowing eyes filled with rage. "You've made enemies today," the overseer growled, his voice cold and mechanical. "Enemies who will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and you will regret it." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the group in stunned silence. Ethan clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "He's bluffing," he said finally. "They're scared. That's why they're threatening us." Mia nodded in agreement. "He's trying to intimidate us. It means we're on the right track." But Ryan wasn't convinced. "Or it means we're walking straight into a trap. You think they'll just let us wander around, spreading dissent? They'll send everything they've got after us." "He's not wrong," Nira admitted quietly. "This won't be easy. But running isn't an option. If we falter now, everything we've done will be for nothing." Ethan took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. Fear wouldn't help them now. "Then we prepare," he said firmly. "We gather supplies, fortify the ship, and keep moving. We hit them where it hurts, disrupt their operations, expose more of their secrets, make them regret underestimating us." The others exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of determination and unease. Slowly they began to nod, agreeing to the plan. The journey ahead would be dangerous, fraught with challenges none of them could fully anticipate. But they had survived the arena. They could survive this too. As the ship continued its course, Ethan allowed himself a brief moment of quiet reflection. The faces of those he lost flashed in his mind, their voices echoing softly. He hadn't asked for this fight, but it had found him anyway. And now, there was no turning back. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't face it alone. Together, they had struck a blow against tyranny. And together, they would see it through to the end. The galaxy was vast, and the odds were stacked against them. But even in the darkest corners of space, hope could still burn bright. The darkness in the arena didn't last long. Emergency lights flickered on, casting a pale glow over the chaos. Guards swarmed the area, their weapons drawn as they tried to regain control. Ethan stood at the center of it all, his chest heaving as adrenaline coursed through him. The plan had worked, for now, but the aftermath was far from certain. Kelvor appeared moments later, his towering frame cutting through the crowd like a blade. His glowing eyes locked onto Ethan, filled with fury. "You've made a grave mistake," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "This rebellion will cost you everything." Ethan tightened his grip on his blade, ready to fight if necessary. But before Kelvor could act, Nira's voice echoed over the intercom system. "Citizens of the galaxy," she shouted, her words clear and commanding. "What you have witnessed here is not a victory. It is a lie. The arena was never about honor or strength. It was a tool to justify war against Earth, a ploy to paint humanity as weak and unworthy." The crowd fell silent, their cheers replaced by murmurs of confusion. On the screens above, images began to flash, secret transmissions, schematics, and recordings of the rulers plotting their invasion. Gasps rippled through the stands as the truth came to light. Ethan watched as alien faces turned from hostility to shock, some even nodding in understanding. Kelvor roared in outrage, but his authority was crumbling. The guards hesitated, unsure where their loyalty lay. In that moment of uncertainty, Mia and the others secured the final systems, ensuring the evidence reached every corner of the galaxy. The arena's rulers had been exposed, their plans unraveling before their eyes. Ethan turned to find Ryan standing nearby, his scared face unreadable. For once, there was no anger in his expression, only quiet contemplation. "Why did you do it?" Ryan asked, his voice rough but steady. "You could have walked away. You didn't have to risk everything." Ethan met his gaze without flinching. "Because walking away wouldn't change anything. This isn't just about us. It's about everyone who's ever been told they're not good enough. We had a chance to make a difference, and I wasn't going to waste it." Ryan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he glanced toward the stands, where the crowd was beginning to disperse. Some cheered for Ethan, while others simply left, overwhelmed by what they'd learned. Finally, Ryan nodded slowly. "Guess I misjudged you," he muttered. "But don't expect me to start trusting aliens anytime soon." Before Ethan could reply, Nira approached them, her sleek form moving gracefully despite the chaos around her. "It's done," she said, her tail flicking with relief. "The transmission has reached every system. The rulers won't be able to hide this." Mia joined them moments later, her fiery hair catching the dim light. "We should get out of here," she said, glancing nervously at the remaining guards. "They're not happy, and we're still outnumbered." Nira agreed. "There's a transport waiting outside the compound. If we move quickly, we can escape before reinforcements arrive." The group moved swiftly, weaving through the shadows as alarms blared in the distance. Ethan kept close to Mia, his senses sharp for any sign of danger. Behind them, Ryan followed reluctantly, his mace still clutched tightly in his hand. Despite their differences, they shared one goal now: survival. When they reached the transport, Ethan paused to look back at the arena one last time. The massive structure loomed in the distance, its walls stained with blood and secrets. He felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, grief, exhaustion. So much had been lost, but something important had been gained: hope. As the transport lifted off, heading into the vast expanse of space, Ethan sat quietly, staring out the window. The others were silent too, each lost in their own thoughts. Mia eventually broke the silence. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Ethan shrugged, though a small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Now, we keep fighting. They may have lost this battle, but the war isn't over yet." The journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan believed they had a chance. Together, they had struck a blow against tyranny, and shown the galaxy that even the smallest voice could rise above the roar. The day of the final match arrived, and the air in the compound was thick with tension. Competitors moved through the halls like shadows, their faces grim and focused. Ethan felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. The battles he'd fought, the lives he'd taken, the secrets he carried. But there was no turning back now. Today would decide not just his fate, but the fate of billions. Calvor gathered them in the main courtyard one last time, his towering form casting a long shadow over the group. "This is it," he announced, his voice cold and mechanical. "The final test. Only one will leave this arena alive." His glowing eyes scanned the crowd, lingering briefly on Ethan before moving on. "Prepare yourselves." Ethan returned to the holding area, where Mia waited for him. Her fiery red hair was tied back tightly, and her green eyes were sharp with determination. "Ready?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "As ready as I'll ever be," Ethan replied, forcing a small smile. He glanced around, searching for Ryan, but the scared man was nowhere to be seen. Part of him wondered if Ryan had guessed what was coming, but there was no time to dwell on it. The plan had to work, or none of them would make it out alive. When they entered the arena, the roar of the crowd was deafening. Massive screens hovered above, broadcasting every move to billions across the galaxy. At the center of the platform stood Crothar, the reigning champion, a hulking brute with skin like obsidian and fists that could crush steel. His presence radiated power, and the cheers of the audience only fueled his confidence. Ethan stepped forward, his blade held firmly in his hand. The contrast between them was striking. Crothar's sheer size against Ethan's lean frame, his raw strength versus Ethan's quick thinking. For a moment, the arena fell silent, the anticipation palpable. The match began with a thunderous clash. Crothar charged like a freight train, his massive arms swinging wildly. Ethan dodged, rolling to the side just in time to avoid being crushed. The ground shook under Crothar's impact, sending tremors through the platform. Ethan stayed light on his feet, circling the giant carefully, looking for an opening. Every swing of Crothar's fists missed, each strike landing inches away from Ethan's body. The crowd grew restless, their cheers turning into shouts of frustration. Crothar roared in anger, his movements becoming more erratic. That's when Ethan saw it, a brief hesitation, a flicker of doubt in the champion's eyes. Seizing the moment, Ethan darted forward, driving his blade into a weak spot near Crothar's shoulder. The giant let out a guttural scream, staggering back. But he wasn't done yet. With a burst of fury, Crothar lunged again, catching Ethan off guard and sending him sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through Ethan's side as he hit the platform hard. The wind knocked out of him. For a split second, panic threatened to take over, but then he remembered Mira's words. Unity in the face of tyranny. He wasn't alone. Pushing through the pain, Ethan scrambled to his feet, gripping his blade tightly. He feinted left, drawing Crothar's attention, then darted right, aiming for another weak spot. This time, the blade sank deep, eliciting a final earth-shaking roar from the champion. Crothar collapsed onto the ground, the crowd erupting into chaos. Some cheered wildly, while others booed, shocked that a human had defeated the undefeated. Ethan stood there, breathing heavily, his heart pounding. He had done it. Against all odds, he had won. But the battle wasn't over. As Calvor stepped forward to announce the victor, Ethan caught a glimpse of movement in the stands. Mira and her group were in position, ready to act. Across the arena, Mia gave him a subtle nod, signaling that everything was set. It was time. Ethan turned to face the crowd, raising his blade high. For a moment, all eyes were on him. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, plunging the arena into darkness. The transmission systems sputtered and died, cutting off the broadcast to the galaxy. Chaos erupted as Nira and her allies launched their assault on the control hub, taking down guards and disabling security systems. In the confusion, Ethan spotted Ryan nearby, his mace raised as if unsure which side to join. Their eyes met briefly, and for the first time, Ethan saw something other than anger in the man's expression. Uncertainty. Whatever Ryan's reasons had been, he didn't move to stop them. As the rebels secured the command center, Ethan allowed himself a moment of quiet relief. The plan had worked. The lies had been exposed, and Earth had been given a fighting chance. But the cost weighed heavily on him. Lives had been lost, sacrifices made. And though the arena fell silent once more, Ethan knew the fight was far from over. The plan was set, but trust didn't come easily. Ethan spent the next few days walking a delicate line, training with Mia and Ryan, while secretly meeting with Nira and her group to finalize the details. The tension between the humans grew thicker as the final match approached. Mia noticed something was off with Ethan, his usual quiet determination replaced by a distant look in his eyes. "What's going on with you?" she asked one evening after another grueling session. They were alone in the training grounds, the hum of machinery filling the silence. Ethan hesitated, torn between keeping the secret and bringing her into the fold. "There's more to this arena than we thought," he said finally. "It's not just about winning or losing. They're using it to justify an attack on Earth." Mia's expression hardened. "And what are you planning to do about it?" He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "Nira and some others want to stop them. We're going to sabotage the transmission during the final match." For a long moment, Mia said nothing. Then she let out a sharp breath. "You're either brave or insane. I haven't decided which yet." She crossed her arms, studying him closely. "Does Ryan know?" "No," Ethan admitted. "I don't think he'd go along with it." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Probably not. He's got his own agenda." Ethan nodded, though he wasn't sure what that agenda was. Ryan had been pulling away even more, disappearing for hours at a time and returning with cuts and bruises that suggested he'd been fighting outside the official matches. Whatever was driving him, it wasn't teamwork or trust. As the days passed, Ethan found himself relying more on Mia. She had a way of cutting through chaos, her sharp mind always 3 steps ahead. Together, they worked out how to bypass the arena's security systems, using makeshift tools and stolen access codes. Nira provided intel from inside the alien ranks, her sleek form blending seamlessly among the other competitors. But things unraveled quickly during a chaotic battle royal, a free-for-all designed to thin out the remaining fighters. The arena was a maze of shifting platforms and hidden traps, forcing everyone to stay on edge. Ethan moved cautiously, his blade ready as he scanned for threats. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Ryan darting toward a group of aliens, his mace swinging wildly. It was reckless, almost suicidal. Then it happened. Ryan spotted Ethan near a narrow bridge and made a split-second decision. Instead of covering Ethan's back, he deliberately knocked him off balance, sending him tumbling into the path of an incoming alien warrior. The crowd roared as Ethan scrambled to his feet, narrowly avoiding a deadly strike. He managed to fight off the attacker, but the betrayal stung worse than any wound. After the match, Ethan confronted Ryan in the holding area. "Why did you do that?" he demanded, his voice low but fierce. Ryan didn't flinch. "This isn't a team sport," he growled. "Every man for himself. You'd do well to remember that." Mia stepped in before things could escalate further. "Save it for the arena," she snapped, glaring at both of them. "We don't have time for this." Later that night, Ethan sat alone, replaying the moment in his mind. Ryan's actions weren't just selfish. They were dangerous. Trust was fragile here, and now it felt like it might shatter completely. Still, Ethan couldn't afford to dwell on it. The final match was only days away, and the stakes were higher than ever. When he met with Nira and her group the next day, he shared what had happened. "Ryan can't be trusted," he said bluntly. "If he finds out about the plan, he'll ruin it, or worse." Nira's tail flicked thoughtfully. "Then we leave him out. Focus on those who are willing to fight for something bigger than themselves." Ethan nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Despite the fractures within the human group, he knew he wasn't alone. Naya stood beside him, her loyalty unwavering. And beyond that, there were allies among the aliens, beings who understood that survival wasn't just about individual strength, but about unity in the face of tyranny. The final pieces of the plan fell into place, each step rehearsed and memorized. As the countdown to the final match began, Ethan allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Betrayal had left scars, but it hadn't broken him. If anything, it had made him sharper, more determined. Whatever happened next, he would face it head-on, for Earth, for humanity, and for the chance to prove that even the smallest voice could echo across the stars. Ethan's victory over Vrax changed things. The other competitors started treating him differently, not just the humans, but the aliens too. Some looked at him with newfound respect, while others watched him with cautious eyes, as if trying to figure out his next move. Even Calvor seemed to take notice, his cold gaze lingering on Ethan longer than usual during training sessions. It was unsettling, like being studied by a predator deciding whether you were worth hunting. But Ethan didn't have much time to think about it. The tournament was moving faster now, the matches growing more intense with each passing day. Between battles, he spent hours practicing with Mia, refining his skills, and learning new tactics. She taught him how to anticipate an opponent's moves, how to read their body language for signs of weakness. "You're quick," she said one evening after a sparring session. "But speed alone won't save you forever. You need to be smarter." Ryan, on the other hand, kept his distance. He rarely joined the group for meals or training, preferring to work alone. Ethan noticed the way Ryan's hands tightened around his mace whenever Calvor entered the room, his knuckles white with tension. There was something simmering beneath the surface with Ryan, something dark and unresolved. But Ethan didn't press him. Everyone here had their secrets. One night, after another exhausting day of drills, Ethan found himself unable to sleep. He wandered through the dimly lit corridors of the compound, his footsteps echoing softly against the metal walls. That's when he heard it, a faint whisper coming from one of the storage rooms. Curious, he crept closer, peering through the cracked door. Inside, he saw Nira, a feline-like alien with sleek silver fur and piercing blue eyes. She was speaking quietly with a group of other competitors, their voices low and urgent. Ethan recognized some of them. A reptilian warrior named Zorak, a hulking brute called Grak, and a slender insectoid whose name he didn't know. They all looked tense, their expressions serious. "We can't keep waiting," Nira said, her tail flicking nervously. "If we don't act soon, they'll use this arena to declare war on Earth. We've seen the transmissions. They're planning it." Ethan froze, his heart pounding. War on Earth. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He'd known the stakes were high, but this was worse than he'd imagined. The arena wasn't just a game. It was a weapon, a tool to justify violence against humanity. Before he could process what he'd heard, Nira turned suddenly, her sharp eyes locking onto him. For a moment, no one moved. Then she stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "How long have you been standing there?" Ethan hesitated, unsure what to say. "Long enough," he admitted finally. "What do you mean, war on Earth?" Nira studied him for a moment before nodding. "Come inside. You deserve to know the truth." The group explained everything. The arena's rulers had orchestrated the tournament not just for entertainment, but as a way to frame humans as weak and unworthy of sovereignty. If the humans failed in the arena, it would give the galactic powers an excuse to invade Earth, claiming it as their own. Nara and her allies wanted to stop them, to expose the conspiracy and rally support from sympathetic factions across the galaxy. Ethan listened in stunned silence. The weight of what they were saying pressed down on him, heavier than anything he'd faced in the arena. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally. "Because you're human," Nara replied simply, "and because you've proven you're willing to fight. If anyone can help us, it's you." For a moment, Ethan didn't respond. His mind raced with questions and doubts. Could he trust these strangers? Was this some kind of trap? But deep down, he knew the truth. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting something bigger, his home, his people, everything he cared about. "I'm in," he said finally, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "What's the plan?" Nira smiled faintly, her sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. "We strike during the final match. That's when the rulers will broadcast their declaration to the galaxy. If we can disrupt the transmission, we can expose their lies." Ethan nodded, feeling the strange mix of fear and determination. This was dangerous, far more dangerous than anything he'd faced so far. But he also knew one thing for certain. He couldn't stand by and do nothing. Not when so much was at stake. Ethan's victory in the first match earned him a brief moment of peace, but it didn't last long. The other competitors began to notice him now, not just as another human, but as someone who could hold his own. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion. A few even nodded in silent acknowledgement, though Ethan wasn't sure if that was respect or just recognition of a potential threat. The days blurred together as training intensified. Each session brought new challenges: hand-to-hand combat drills, tests of endurance, and simulations designed to push them to their limits. Ethan struggled at times, especially when facing opponents faster or stronger than him. But he adapted quickly, learning to rely on strategy rather than brute force. Mia continued to guide him, her sharp instincts proving invaluable. "You're smart," she told him one evening after a particularly grueling session. "Use that. It's your best weapon." Ryan, however, remained distant. He rarely spoke unless necessary and often trained alone, honing his skills with relentless focus. Ethan noticed the way Ryan watched the aliens, his jaw clenched and his hands gripping his mace tightly. There was anger there, deep and unshakable, and Ethan wondered what, or who, had put it there. Still, Ryan's skill was undeniable. In one sparring match, he took down 3 opponents in quick succession, leaving the crowd murmuring in awe. Then came the announcement that sent shivers through the group. Kelvor gathered them in the main courtyard, his towering presence casting an ominous shadow over the assembly. "Tomorrow," he declared, "you face Vrax." The name hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and foreboding. Ethan glanced around, seeing fear flicker in the eyes of even the most seasoned fighters. Vrax was a legend, a reptilian warrior known for his unmatched strength and ferocity. His victories were brutal, often ending in the complete annihilation of his opponents. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay on his cot, staring at the ceiling as thoughts raced through his mind. How could he possibly stand a chance against someone like Vrax? The alien was twice his size, with scales harder than steel and claws sharp enough to tear through metal. Panic crept in, threatening to overwhelm him, but he forced himself to breathe deeply. He remembered Mia's words, "Use your brain." Strength wouldn't win this fight. He needed something else. Morning arrived too soon. As Ethan prepared for the match, Mia approached him, her expression serious. "Listen to me," she said, her voice low but firm. "Vrax is big, but he's not fast. Stay mobile, keep moving. Don't let him corner you." She handed him a small device, a makeshift gadget she'd pieced together from spare parts. "This might help. It creates a flash of light. Use it if you get desperate." Ethan nodded, slipping the device into his pocket. "Thanks." When he stepped into the arena, the roar of the crowd hit him like a wave. The stands were packed with spectators, their cheers deafening. Across the platform stood Vrax, his massive frame towering over everything around him. His yellow eyes locked onto Ethan, filled with predatory hunger. For a moment, Ethan felt small, insignificant. But then he reminded himself why he was here, not just for survival, but for something greater. The match began with a deafening clang of bells. Vrax charged immediately, his claws slicing through the air. Ethan dodged, rolling to the side just in time. The ground shook under Vrax's weight, but Ethan stayed light on his feet, circling the giant carefully. Every swing of Vrax's claws missed, each strike landing inches away from Ethan's body. The crowd grew restless, their cheers turning into shouts of frustration. Finally, Ethan saw his opening. As Vrax lunged again, Ethan activated the device Mia had given him. A blinding flash erupted, disorienting the reptilian warrior. Seizing the moment, Ethan darted forward, driving his blade into a weak spot between Vrax's armored scales. The alien let out a guttural roar before collapsing to the ground. For a moment, the arena fell silent. Then, slowly, the crowd erupted into cheers. Not jeers or taunts, but genuine applause. Ethan stood there, breathing heavily, his heart pounding. He had done it. Against all odds, he had defeated Vrax. Back in the holding area, Mia grinned at him. "Told you to stay mobile." Even Ryan gave him a curt nod, though his expression remained unreadable. Ethan allowed himself a small smile, but he knew this was only the beginning. The battles ahead would be harder, the stakes higher. Still, for now, he had proven something, not just to the crowd, but to himself. He belonged here. The next morning, the training grounds buzzed with tension. Competitors moved quickly, their bodies tense and ready for whatever came next. Ethan woke early, his mind racing with thoughts of the previous day's maze. He knew today would be different, more dangerous, more personal. The idea of facing live opponents weighed heavily on him, but he pushed the fear aside. There was no room for doubt, not when so much depended on him. Breakfast was a quiet affair. The humans sat together at one end of the dining hall, their trays filled with unfamiliar food that smelled strange but tasted bland. Ethan picked at his meal, watching Ryan across the table. The scared man ate in silence, his focus sharp and unwavering. Mia, on the other hand, seemed restless, tapping her fingers against the edge of her tray. "You think they'll pair us against each other?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Ethan hesitated before answering. "I don't know, but we can't worry about that right now. We just have to focus on staying alive." Ryan snorted, his voice low and gravelly. "Easy for you to say. You're not exactly battle-tested." Mia shot him a glare. "And you are. Last I checked, none of us signed up for this." Before Ryan could respond, Calvor's voice boomed over the intercom, calling everyone to assemble. The group filed out into the main courtyard, where rows of weapons lay displayed on long tables. Swords, spears, energy rifles, and devices Ethan couldn't even name gleamed under the artificial lights. He felt a pang of unease as he realized he'd need to choose something soon and learn how to use it fast. Calvor stepped forward, his towering form casting a shadow over the crowd. "Today, you fight," he announced. "Not for sport, but for survival. Your opponents will be chosen at random. Victory earns you respect. Defeat means elimination." His gaze swept across the group, lingering briefly on the humans. "Choose your weapons wisely." Ethan approached the table slowly, his eyes scanning the array of tools designed for destruction. He wasn't used to holding weapons. His hands were made for fixing things, not breaking them. Still, he reached for a short blade. It felt lighter than the others, easier to handle. Beside him, Mia picked up a pair of curved daggers, spinning them expertly in her hands. Ryan chose a heavy mace, its spiked head glinting menacingly in the light. Once everyone was armed, the competitors were led to individual arenas scattered throughout the compound. Ethan's stomach churned as he entered his assigned space, a circular platform surrounded by high walls and filled with sand. Across from him stood his opponent, a wiry alien with 6 limbs and skin like cracked stone. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Ethan tightened his grip on the blade, trying to steady his breathing. The match began without warning. The alien lunged forward with surprising speed, its claws swiping through the air inches from Ethan's face. He stumbled back, narrowly avoiding the blow, and swung his blade instinctively. It connected with one of the creature's arms, eliciting a guttural roar. Pain flared in Ethan's side as another limb struck him, knocking him off balance. He hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of him. For a moment, Panic threatened to take over. But then he remembered Mia's advice. Stay calm, stay focused. Rolling to the side, he dodged another attack and scrambled to his feet. This time, he didn't hesitate. He feinted left, drawing the alien's attention, then darted right, driving the blade deep into its torso. The creature let out a final shriek before collapsing onto the sand. Breathing heavily, Ethan stared down at the body. His hands trembled, but he forced himself to stand tall as Calvor's voice echoed overhead. Victory achieved. The crowd beyond the walls erupted in cheers, though Ethan barely heard them. All he could think about was the life he had just taken, and the lives still waiting to challenge him. Later, back in the holding area, Mia approached him. Not bad for a first-timer, she said, though her tone lacked its usual edge. Ethan nodded, too drained to speak. Nearby, Ryan watched silently, his expression unreadable. For now, Ethan had survived. But the battles ahead promised only more bloodshed and harder choices. The training grounds were nothing like Ethan had imagined. Instead of a simple arena or battlefield, it was a sprawling complex filled with strange machines, holographic simulations, and obstacle courses that seemed designed to test every possible skill. Towering walls surrounded the area, their surfaces covered in glowing symbols that pulsed faintly in rhythm, with a hum of energy coursing through the facility. The air smelled metallic, sharp, and unnatural, making Ethan's nose twitch as he followed the group inside. Calvor stood at the center of the compound, his towering frame casting a long shadow over the competitors. With a wave of his clawed hand, he signaled for everyone to gather around. "This is where you will prepare," he announced, his voice cold and mechanical. "Survival depends on your ability to adapt. Failure means death, not just for you, but for those who rely on you." His gaze lingered on the humans for a moment longer than anyone else, as if daring them to step out of line. Ethan glanced at the others. Mia, the fiery-haired woman from earlier, stood nearby with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Ryan, the scared man, kept his distance, his eyes scanning the surroundings like a predator assessing its territory. There were others too, aliens of all shapes and sizes, some watching curiously, others glaring with open hostility. Ethan felt small again, a stranger in a world that seemed determined to chew him up and spit him out. The first task came quickly. Competitors were split into groups and sent to different stations. Ethan found himself paired with Mia and two aliens, a lanky, bird-like creature with shimmering feathers, and a squat, four-armed being with skin like polished stone. Their assignment was simple: navigate a maze filled with traps while retrieving a glowing orb placed at the center. Simple in theory, but deadly in practice. The maze was dark, its narrow passages lit only by faint blue lights embedded in the walls. Every step echoed loudly, making it impossible to move quietly. Ethan took the lead, his instincts telling him to stay alert. He remembered stories of ancient warriors using caution and patience to survive. They didn't have advanced weapons or technology, just their wits. Maybe that could work here too. It wasn't long before they encountered their first trap. A section of the floor collapsed beneath the bird-like alien, sending it plummeting into a pit lined with spikes. Its screech cut through the silence, leaving the group frozen in shock. Ethan clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. "We need to watch our footing," he said, his voice steady despite the knot forming in his stomach. Mia nodded, her green eyes narrowing as she studied the path ahead. They moved slower after that, testing each step before committing their weight. Ethan noticed that Mia had a knack for spotting hidden dangers. Her sharp eyes caught subtle changes in the floor's texture or faint wires strung across the corridors. She didn't say much, but her actions spoke volumes. Together, they reached the orb without losing anyone else. When they returned to the starting point, Calvor was waiting. He examined the orb briefly before tossing it aside. "Acceptable," he said, his tone devoid of praise. "But survival requires more than luck. Tomorrow, you face live opponents." Back in the holding area, Ethan sat alone, replaying the day's events in his mind. The maze had been terrifying, but it was also a reminder of what he was capable of. He wasn't just a mechanic fixing broken parts. He could think on his feet, solve problems, and keep moving forward even when fear threatened to paralyze him. Mia approached him later, sitting down without asking permission. "You're not half bad," she said, her voice softer than before. "Most humans freeze up in situations like that." "You didn't." Ethan shrugged, unsure how to respond. "I've had practice dealing with tough spots." She smirked. "Yeah, well, don't get cocky. This is just the beginning." As the hours passed, Ethan watched the other competitors interact, or avoid each other entirely. Some formed alliances, whispering plans in hushed tones. Others stayed isolated, their distrust evident in every glance. Ryan remained aloof, his scared face unreadable as he cleaned a knife with slow, deliberate movements. Ethan wondered if the man would ever trust anyone, let alone another human. By the time night fell, exhaustion settled over the group like a heavy blanket. Ethan lay on his cot, staring at the ceiling. The challenges tomorrow would be harder, deadlier. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. Giving up wasn't an option. Not for him, and not for the people counting on him back home. Ethan Cole never thought he'd see the inside of a starship again, let alone one that smelled like rust and regret. The dim lights flickered as the transport rattled through the void of space, its engines groaning with every jump between systems. He sat in silence, staring at the metal floor beneath his boots. His hands were calloused from years of fixing broken machinery on the outer colonies, but nothing could have prepared him for the message that came 2 weeks ago. It wasn't a request, it was an order. Delivered in a sleek black envelope marked with symbols he didn't recognize, the letter simply said, "You are summoned to compete in the Galactic Arena." Below it was a date, coordinates, and a warning. Refusal would mean the destruction of his colony. Ethan had read it over and over, hoping there was some hidden meaning or loophole. But there wasn't. This was no negotiation. It was survival. The transport landed with a thud, jolting Ethan out of his thoughts. A hiss filled the air as the door slid open, revealing a world unlike anything he'd ever seen. Ilo 7 stretched before him, a planet covered in sprawling cities of glass and steel, their surfaces shimmering under twin suns. Above, massive screens displayed images of fierce warriors battling in colossal arenas, their faces magnified for billions to see. The roar of distant crowds echoed even here, miles away from the main stadium. Ethan stepped off the ship, feeling small and out of place. Around him, other arrivals moved with purpose, their expressions hardened by fear or determination. Some wore armor, others carried weapons, and all seemed far more prepared than he did. As he walked, someone bumped into him, a woman with sharp features and fiery red hair tied back in a braid. She gave him a quick glance, her green eyes scanning him up and down before she muttered, "Try not to die too fast, okay?" Her name was Mia Torres, though Ethan wouldn't learn that until later. For now, she disappeared into the crowd, leaving him alone once more. Ahead, a towering figure waited, flanked by armed guards. Its exoskeleton gleamed in the sunlight, each movement precise and calculated. This was Calivor, the overseer of the arena. His voice boomed across the gathering, deep and mechanical. "Welcome, competitors. You stand on the threshold of greatness, or oblivion. Prove your worth, and perhaps you will leave this place alive." Ethan swallowed hard. The weight of those words pressed down on him like gravity doubled. He glanced around, noticing the mix of species, scaled reptilians, insectoids with multiple limbs, hulking brutes with tusks, and sleek feline-like beings. And then there were the humans, few and scattered, their faces pale against the vibrant colors of alien skin. They looked just as lost as he felt. As the group began moving toward the training grounds, Ethan caught sight of another human, a man with broad shoulders and a scar running down his cheek. His name tag read Ryan Carter. Unlike Ethan, Ryan carried himself with confidence, his posture rigid, his jaw clenched. When their eyes met briefly, Ethan saw something familiar in them: anger. Not the kind born of fear, but the kind that comes from loss. The walk to the training facility was long and silent, save for the hum of machinery overhead. Ethan tried to focus on what lay ahead, but his mind kept drifting back to home. The dusty streets of his colony, the laughter of children playing outside, the quiet nights spent tinkering with old tech. Would he ever see them again? Or would he become just another forgotten face in the arena's endless cycle of violence? When they finally reached the gates of the training compound, the crowd stopped. Above them loomed a massive holographic display showing previous champions, their victories immortalized in vivid detail. The screen shifted suddenly, projecting an image of Earth, a fragile blue marble floating in the darkness of space. A murmur rippled through the humans in the group. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Whatever happened here, it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of them.